So the reason it's called a box and whisker plot is because when you make it, there's a box in the middle, and then there's two lines off to the sides, which I guess look like whiskers. And so we'll call it a box and whisker plot. I guess it could have been called a box and two line plot, but that doesn't sound nearly as exciting or as descriptive as a box and whisker plot. And what it does is it shows you a range of your data. The line right in the middle becomes your median. Then what the box contains is your interquartile range. So the bottom end of your box is quartile 1, the top end of your box is quartile 3. And then you have a line that extends in both directions that goes all the way down to your minimum, and the other whisker goes all the way up to your maximum. So we're going to learn how to make these on our graphing calculators and solve some questions with them. So when you've got a box and whisker plot, the numbers there are given to you. What would our median value be? Just the 3. It's not hard once you know what the lines stand for. Upper quartile is going to be 6. Interquartile range, again, when we're talking statistics, this is just a number. How far is it from the smallest quartile to the largest quartile? There's a distance of 4. Now, how many students are getting a mark bigger than 6? Now, the whiskers in each of the sections divide everything into chunks of 25%. So if 6 is the third quartile, there's going to be 25% of students getting larger than 6. We know that there was 32 students in total, so 25% of 32 will be 8. So these aren't super difficult once we realize what the values stand for. So I'd like you to try this next one. All right, how did you do? Did you find out that the median was 18? The value of A is 10, and the value of B is 44. So next thing we're going to look at is how do we put this data into our calculator. So if we take out our calculator and put this data into list 1. So I'll give you some time to put that data in there, and then we'll learn how to make our box and whisker plots. So once we have your data in your calculator, go to second y equals, the same place where you turned your histogram on. You can change it from a histogram to a box and whisker plot. And that's going to be this 5th one. The one right before it with the 2 little dots, that's also a box and whisker plot. What that one does is that one calculates outliers and gets rid of them. So we're going to just right now do the box and whisker plot here. Push enter on that one to highlight. Invalid dimension. Wonderful. What did I do? Got our data in list 1. Second stat plot, it might have had my frequency on something here. So, yes. So once we've just got data in list 1, right? We don't have any frequencies. And right now I had my data in list 1 and frequencies in list 2. So for our frequencies, we're going to get rid of that. Either we have to put a 1 in there or we have to get rid of it. It looks like we're going to have to put a 1 because it wants to have something in there. And then zoom 9, and it will make your box and whisker plot. Now, if that just makes a nice picture for you, it's not really that useful. Sort of like, oh, nice. But if you hit your trace button, it'll hop to each of those values. So you can get your minimum, your quartile 1, your median, quartile 3, and your maximum super quick. So if we make a diagram of what we just drew, we can label each of those things on there. So, yeah, not very helpful if it just drew a box and whiskers and you're like, whoo. But the fact that you can get those values from there by just hitting your trace button is kind of nice. And it gives you a visual of how the data is spread out. So it tells you something about the data just by looking at the picture. Whereas if you just did one var stats and got all of your values, again, that's helpful for getting all those values, but you would miss out that it looks like things are pretty spread out, although the median is closer to the maximum than it is to the minimum. So there's some data. Practice with your calculator, putting things into your calculator to find all of those values. You can use your box and whisker plot if you would like, but this time there is a frequency. So notice where we did things with our frequency, that we changed it to 1, you would now have to change that to list 2. And I'll put the answers up here, so as you're calculating, you could either, here I'm using one var stats to print out all the data. You could also use your, why don't you guys use your box and whisker plots and just see if these answers match. So here's our median, here's our quartile 1, quartile 3, max, and minimum. Those are the same values that you would get from your box and whisker plot. So again, you could put all of that into list 1, and now you wouldn't have a frequency list. And there are the values for A, B, C, and D, and E. So we have our frequency down here, and filling in the numbers from our chart, you can figure out that P has to be 17, because that's between 65 and 75, and Q has to be 11, because that's between 95 and 105. There's 93 numbers in total, so if you add 1 and divide by 2, your median is going to be your 47th one. And now it's asking for a median class, so we're going to write down the whole group from 75 to 85, because that's going to be our median class. Now when you're putting these values, if you put these values into your calculator, in list 1, you'll put the mid value of each of those. So you'll put 50 and 60 and 70 and 80. And then in list 2, you'll put your frequency. And then you could use your calculator to calculate your mean. You could multiply them all out, 50 times 7, 60 times 14, and so on and so on. Add that all up and get your mean as well. But that'll be the same number that your calculator would give you.